Assalamu alaikum. My name is Naz Shah and I'm the Member of Parliament for Bradford West. This is my story, my journey, and why I think lifelong learning is so important.
Naz Shah has been MP for Bradford West since 2015 and is currently the Shadow Minister for Community Cohesion.
So my parents were originally from Pakistan. So my mum came in the 70s and then in 1973 I came along. I didn't have a conventional upbringing in the sense of my dad left my mum when I was 6 years old, and then my mum became a single parent. She was pregnant with my younger sister at the time, and I had a little brother. We moved from squalor to squalor. Her story is very much on record, and I became the translator for my mum, if you like. And when we lost our house, we moved a lot. And then my mum met people. We were living in poverty, abject poverty. Didn't know at the time because I was a child. To me, my mum was a loving mum and doing what she could for us. And at 12, I was sent to Pakistan. And at the time, it didn't make sense. I mean, now looking back at it, it all makes sense because there's, the history of the kind of abuse that she was facing by men, the kind of exploitation that she was facing, and she was trying to get rid of me to protect me and sent me to Pakistan. I spent 2 years and 4 months there. I only came back at the age of 15.
Aged 18, Naz's life was turned further upside down when her mother was jailed for the murder of her abuser, and Naz became not just the head of her household, but also a campaigner for her mum's release.
And all of a sudden, overnight, I became a parent to 2 teenagers, my brother and my sister. We lost the house that we lived in. We lost everything. There was no normality. Life became going to prison, visiting my mum. And then Southall Black Sisters got involved. After she got convicted, she was given a 20-year tariff. And in 1995, she finally admitted and talked about the abuse that she'd faced. And the reason she didn't talk about it was because of the honour and all of the impact of that. And that's where I think, if I reflect on it now, where did my politics start? My politics started when I realised the injustice that my mum had been through. Mum's tariff got reduced, but she still served 14 years.
Alongside the work on freeing her mum, Naz began the long journey to educate herself.
So I think all of the experiences that you have shape you and influence you, and then you have different ways of learning. So I find now, as a 47-year-old mother of 3, I get that I'm an experiential learner because that's how my conditioning was. So every experience that I had, I learned from it. I took what I could from it. The experience of being with, in some ways, I mean, as tragic as it was, I was in a privileged position because I had access to people who were community activists who were the top of their game. People like Southall Black Sisters, Justice for Women and the lawyers. So everything that they told me, I just soaked it up and I learned from it. Living in Pakistan teaches you a lot of skills and different life skills. And my granddad always said to me, there are 3 types of learners. And he drilled this into me, said there's one of those people who makes a mistake and continues to make a mistake and never learns from it. He says the person who makes a mistake and learns from it. He says, but the best person is you watch others make the mistake and you learn from it, so you never have to make the mistake. And the same applies, that you learn from those people who are really, really good at what they do, and you watch how they do it and you learn from it and you soak it up.
More formal learning followed, enabling Naz to forge ahead with a career in healthcare.
I knew I missed out on my education when I was 18, so my plan was to always go back and get an education because I know the value of education. I wasn't able to complete an access course, but I did take an access course and I applied myself for a few years. I did get my certificate for translating because I'd been in Pakistan and studied Urdu in Pakistan. So I did get those things that really, really did help. So I've had lots of leadership development programs. I was very, very blessed. I was very, very blessed to be around people who saw my skill that I'd learned from my life experience and were happy to kind of help me hone that and polish that up, which really, really did help. I started off as a carer, and from a carer I built myself up within 10 years to be from a carer to a regional director for a leadership development program. And then I had people around me who mentored me. So I had a mentor in the NHS. I had lots of interventions from the voluntary sector, learning from peers, doing management certificates. So that kind of all built me up to get to where I got to.
By 2015, Naz was not only a champion in healthcare, but also an activist in her local Labour Party and became the MP for Bradford West.
It's really humbling. You do have that kind of reality check of, wow, this is what the responsibility is. But it's the daunting bit for me. So I don't have the issue of, with some people say, as a black woman, as an Asian woman, that imposter syndrome. I don't have that. And the reason I don't have that is because of the election that I fought. I've earned my place here because I've earned the trust of my constituents. So I won't have anybody telling me that I don't belong here. What does daunt me is the level of responsibility because you're representing your constituents. That's like the burden of leadership that you feel, of having the responsibility of people and representing them. That's an honour which you can't take lightly.
Naz's time in Parliament has had many highlights and challenges, but her two shadow ministerial roles, particularly in women and equalities, has been close to her heart.
When I look at it, from all my background, race equality work that I've done over the years, before I went into politics, leadership development, one of the things that I've always said is, had my mum been arrested by a woman, she might have got treated differently. Had that woman been of an ethnic background, she might have been understood a lot quicker. Had she been represented by a female lawyer as opposed to a white male, had she been represented by an Asian lawyer as opposed to a white male, had she been before a judge or in a prison which was reflective, somebody might have understood her abuse a lot quicker.
The work that Naz has championed, as well as her own journey, is an inspiration to many, and Naz is keen to ensure that, like her, others get a second chance and control their own destiny.
Statistically, from my mum being in prison, all three of us siblings, should we be homeowners, should we have families, should we be settled, should we have the jobs and careers that we have, should I be the Member of Parliament for Bradford West? And let's be honest, statistically, that's a no-no. But statistics, you can either let statistics determine your outcomes or you can take control of your own outcomes. And those that will get anywhere will be the ones that will take control of their own narrative and make sure that they own it. Don't let anybody else own it. And I won't let anybody else own my narrative. I will carve my way. I will make those, I will, if a door ain't opening, I'm knocking it down. If it ain't knocking down, I'll find an alternative way of getting there. As far as I'm concerned, where there's a will, there's a way. As long as your value base is the right value base and you take responsibility for who you are, what you're doing. And that's where you need to get to.